So for today, we're back on Cyberpunk, and this time with the RTX 3060 Ti, and we'll be testing out the FSR 3.0 mod, and we'll see if we can actually match the 4060 with DLSS 3.0. Okay, for the settings, we're going for the Ultra preset at 1080p. We'll be over that. No RT yet. No DLSS, of course. There we go. I've gone ahead and disabled Frame Gen as well. And yeah, there we go. Alright, and finally in the game, let's get going. So far in the 80s, guys. This will fall down in a second. And yeah, it does into the 70s and the high 60s. That's pretty good, to be honest, because with the 4060, we had like 60 FPS on average, and it even fell down into the mid 50s and the high 50s occasionally. So yeah, we're doing much better already. The game isn't stuttering or lagging either. It's a pretty good experience as is at the ultra settings. For the VRAM, we're sitting at 6 gigs and system RAM at 15. But it is climbing up, I believe. So yeah, we'll see how we go. But yeah, so far, this card is doing a better job. I do want to see if it can keep up though, once I enable Frame Gen. Alright, time for the next scene, which is a fighting scene. Going to be indoors, and we'll see how far the FPS falls down. I believe with the 4060, it fell into the high 40s. So hopefully we can do much better than that. I'm going to guess probably the mid 50s or the low 50s with this card. But regardless, it does fall below 60 FPS, I would imagine. And indoors, let's be quick about it. Let's walk down here and shoot this guy, and the FPS falls down the mid 50s. There we go. Wow, this card does much better than the 4060 without DLSS. And then just fighting guys, we're sitting in the 70s still and the 60s. Yeah, so already the game is playable at a smooth frame rate. The game doesn't stutter. Again, it does fall below 60 FPS in this rare scene, but yeah, all around quite good, and you don't really need DLSS just to play the game. Okay guys, let's back out now, enable DLSS 2.0 with no frame gen, and try again. So with the 4060 with the same preset, it sat into the 80s on average, and in those easier scenes it went up into the 90s. But with this card, it's sitting in the 90s, and probably going to go up into the 100s in those easier scenes. Okay, now it's about the same, to be honest. It's in the mid 80s and the low 80s, but at the start it was sitting in the 90s like quite easily. So yeah, a slight FPS bump over the 4060 with DLSS, but without it, again, does much better. And for the graphics, guys, it looks fantastic. A bit softer, especially in the distance, but up close it looks very sharp. It looks quite good and definitely usable. And at this point, if you go indoors and shoot the guy again, FPS should be in the 60s at all times. Going over here, where's the guy? There he is. Ready? And the FPS falls down into the mid 60s now. Quite good. We gain like 9 FPS pretty much versus beforehand. And yeah, at this point, it's a stable 60 at all times. And for the graphics again, as you guys can see, looks identical in this section. Looks very good. And now going to the settings, we have Frame Gen active, apply it, and store the quality preset. Looks quite good. Let's go. What are we getting? 150 FPS. Let me just pause the game here and double check the settings. Yep, DLSS quality, Frame Gen active, and stored ultra. Yep, looks quite good. So yeah, 150 FPS right here, guys. It will drop down obviously, but let's see how far it falls down. Into the 140s now. Wow. So with the 4060 we had like 120 FPS here, I believe, like on average. And now with this card we're sitting in the 130s and the 140s. It's a small FPS bump obviously over the 4060. It's like 10 FPS. So it's not really huge, but still quite cool that we can use a mod and turn this card into a basic 4060 pretty much. And yeah, for the stutters, again, quite good. The input lag is also quite good. I can't really feel it while driving. But the real test will be while I'm actually fighting and shooting the gun in the next scene. Now with the 4060 in this section, it fell down into the low 100s, I believe. So if we can get above that, it would be quite nice. Let's go over here. Yep, into the okay, our lowest point was like 115. So like a 5 FPS increase over the 4060. Again, it's very minor, but still above the 4060. And yeah, for the input lag, guys, it feels quite good. It's not as good as 130 FPS, like actual 130 FPS. It feels like 70 FPS on average pretty much, or like 80 FPS. So yeah, it's still quite good and definitely usable. And now time for RT. I've disabled DLSS, of course, as well as Frame Gen. And going with the Psycho RT, no path tracing, of course. And yeah, let's jump into it, so we can get. So with the 4060, we had like 30 FPS on average. It was barely 30 FPS. It could fall down easily into the 20s. And with the 3060 Ti, wow, 40 FPS. And yeah, I think for keyboard and mouse, this is definitely unplayable. But if you use a controller, I think it's definitely doable and definitely enjoyable, as the game's not stuttering or lagging. It's running at a stable 30, at least in this section anyway. And now with DLSS at the balance preset, we're now sitting in the 70s so far. This is going to fall down into the mid 60s, and it's about the same as what we had the 4060. It was sitting in the 60s and the mid 60s on average. I think for this card though, I would skip RT probably and use screen space reflections instead. Looks really good and performance is much better, and you're not as reliant on DLSS as you are now. Back indoors, sitting in the 60s and the high 50s. It's not a good sign. Let's shoot this guy. The FPS falls down into the high 40s there. And with Frame Gen active, FPS is sitting in the 110s and the 100s. So yeah, about the same as the 4060, and occasionally a little bit above it as well. So yeah, it's a pretty sick mod. As you guys know, the main selling feature of the 4060 is that it's got Frame Gen, and this card doesn't. In terms of power, they're very similar to each other. So using a mod, you can turn this card into a basic 4060. And this card obviously has been out for a while now. It's pretty much everywhere on eBay, and normally cheaper as well. So if you want to upgrade your card, instead of buying a 40 series card, you can buy this card instead. And using mods, you can turn a missing feature into an actual feature with performance that's similar to the real thing. So yeah, that's about it guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time, next video. See you guys then.